Today, we're tackling a really interesting question. Can data collected by millions of regular people, volunteers, actually hold up in the world of professional science?
I mean, we've all been there, right? You're in your backyard, you see some strange looking beetle or a bird you've never seen before, and what's the first thing you do? You pull out your phone. Well, that simple little act, snapping a picture, sharing what you saw, you're actually plugging into this massive global movement. You might be contributing a crucial piece of data without even knowing it. But what actually makes that photo a real piece of scientific data? Okay, so let's get into it. Before we can even start talking about millions of data points, we have to understand the basic building block of it all. What is a single record?
So, the fancy term for this is biological recording. It's really just the science of figuring out where living things are and when they were there. It's a practice that's been around forever, and it really just boils down to four key things.
And here's the amazing part: creating a valid scientific record is incredibly simple. All you need are these four W's. Who saw it? Jane Doe. What did she see? A hedgehog. Where was it? Darwin Close. And when? September 15th, 2016. That's it. Boom, you've got a scientific record.
The hedgehog sighting, it feels pretty low stakes, right? But the term biological record can also mean something way, way more serious, with some pretty profound legal and personal consequences. So let's follow that thread. We're going to go from the backyard to the lab. Principles of managing the data are actually the same, but you'll see the stakes get much, much higher. Okay, so take a look at this. This is not a hobbyist's notebook. This is a mandatory policy from a government's Department of Health. You see the official letterhead? Yeah, we're a long way from our hedgehog spotter, Jane Doe. And here's where it all clicks. In this context, a biological record isn't a hedgehog. It's a blood sample, a tissue sample. It's literally your genetic information. The rules for managing this kind of record are, for obvious reasons, incredibly strict. It just shows you how this simple idea of a record can scale from a casual observation to critical life-altering data. So, with that high-stakes idea in your head, let's zoom all the way back out to the world of volunteer science because it is now operating on an absolutely unbelievable scale. The engine driving this whole explosion of data is something called citizen science. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's all about getting regular people, non-professionals like you and me, involved in the actual process of scientific discovery. And the growth has just been insane. I mean, look at these charts. They show two of the biggest platforms, SciStarter and Zooniverse. And you can see that in less than a decade, the number of projects and volunteers just skyrocketed. It's a total exponential curve, and it's all fueled by technology and just, people's passion. Think about this. By 2015, just one of those platforms, Zooniverse, already had 1.4 million volunteers. That is a research team bigger than any university on Earth could even dream of putting together. But with that kind of scale comes a pretty big problem. And that problem really comes down to one word: trust. Because when you have that many people, all with different skill levels, collecting data, well, professional scientists tend to get a little nervous. This quote just nails the whole issue. The big fear is that if the data is bad, then any science, or even worse, any government policy based on that data will also be bad. And it's a totally legitimate concern. It's one of the main reasons these projects have had to fight so hard to be taken seriously. Okay, so enough talk, let's put that fear to the test. Let's look at the actual numbers and see how the volunteers really stack up against the pros. But first, we need a baseline, right? How accurate are the professionals anyway? And here's something that might surprise you. Even the trained experts aren't perfect. They're good for sure, like 98% agreement on identifying trees. But look, in one study, they were only 88% accurate with plants. Let's really focus on that last number though. 96.6% accuracy on the Snapshot Serengeti project. Remember that. Here it is, the showdown. On the exact same task, identifying animals and photos from the Serengeti, the individual experts working alone hit that 96.6% accuracy rate. And their mistakes were from simple stuff, getting tired, making typos. The volunteers, they used a totally different approach. Each photo was shown to a bunch of different volunteers, and their answers were all combined to create a consensus. So what was the result? 97.9%. Let that sink in. The group of volunteers was more accurate than the individual experts. The wisdom of the crowd, when it's structured the right way, actually beat the trained professional. So how on earth is that even possible? Well, look, It's not magic, and it's definitely not by accident. Getting that level of quality takes a brilliant and very deliberate system of checks and balances. You can think of it like a quality control playbook. So here's how they do it. First, iterative design. They're constantly testing and tweaking the tasks to make them simpler. Second, training and testing. They give volunteers feedback so they can actually get better. Third, and this is the secret sauce we just saw in the Serengeti example, replication. Get lots of eyes on the same problem. And finally, they use smart expert validation. Instead of having an expert check every single photo, an algorithm flags only the weirdest or most difficult ones for them to review. It saves a ton of time. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. This is so much more than just counting birds or classifying galaxies. This is about a fundamental shift in who gets to participate in science. By building these smart systems that harness our collective intelligence, we've basically opened the floodgates to discoveries on a scale we've just never seen before. It really just leaves you wondering, what are we going to find next?